Christmas and or my birthday, I have friends who give me a frozen chocolate pie. It is a chocolate satin pie, and it is so good. Now, this does not make its home at the freezer at my home. This goes in the freezer at work usually, because I have a preteen daughter and a teenage son at my house, and this chocolate pie would be an endangered species at my house. And something as special as a gifted chocolate satin pie needs to be savored over several sittings, not devoured all at once. So, in other words, this is mine, and I'm going to enjoy it. This is the last week of the Game Nights series, and the final game is the classic Monopoly. Now, what does pie have to do with a board game about real estate investments? We'll come back around to that by way of a story Jesus told. So as we do so, or until then, feel free to get your own slice of pie. Not this one, get your own. This is mine. So Monopoly is one of those games that's almost either you love it or you hate it. Can you guess who's who here? I do like playing the game. Allison, do you like the game?
Not so much.
Did you like playing with your family a little bit?
I mean, there are worse games. There are some games I will absolutely not play, but
Risk.
That would be one of them.
Yeah.
Yes.
So what makes you not a fan of Monopoly?
Well, one reason is that it takes a super long time. Like, I could probably count on one hand how many times I've actually played the whole game. But also I don't like it because the whole objective of the game is to make everybody else bankrupt or take over everyone else. I don't like that.
It's in the vicious category for you. It can be vicious.
It can be vicious.
Depends on who you play with, but that is the objective of the game. Mm-hmm. Is basically derived from whoever's the greediest.
Correct.
Is what it comes down to.
Yes. Yeah.
I would say it does have redeeming qualities about it. For one, it does help teach about money. You get better at making change. You learn some negotiation skills about risk and reward, investing for later, resource management.
How to count to 10.
How to count to 10. Yep.
I would say it's one of those games that, like, everybody knows. Like, go past go, you get $200.
Yeah, free parking.
Free parking.
Yeah, it has some catchphrases. So, did you notice when we played the other night that I tried to set a non-vicious tone for the game? There was a very small, very almost insignificant moment.
No.
Where I didn't do what I normally would do if I was playing the game. So
No, I thought you just didn't want to get vicious for sermon illustration.
No, I was willing to go for it. So there was a moment where I had to pay rent, and I think it was just amounted to $1, but I said keep the change.
Oh yeah, I do remember that.
So it wasn't a big deal, but trying to make it, this is not going to be a cutthroat kind of game. We're here to enjoy. It's back to the objective is to win, but the purpose of playing the game was to enjoy being together.
Right.
I tried a little bit.
Right, because it wouldn't be any fun at all if it was vicious from the get-go.
Depends on who you ask. So Monopoly, like you said, is pretty well known. Can you guess how old it is? What was the year where Monopoly first came out?
I'm going to guess 1945.
That's too late. It was before that.
1935.
That is correct.
Oh.
1935. It was actually the Parker Brothers, which is now Hasbro, bought it from someone who had a predecessor called the Landlord Game or something like that, that actually was an educational tool about why monopolies were bad in the early 1900s. They bought the rights and made Monopoly, and from there it became really popular. So popular that there is hundreds of variations. At my parents' in their game closet, they would have Iliopoly for U of I.
Go Illini!
That's right. And they also have Hawkopoly for the Prairie Central Hawks, where I went to high school. Probably a fundraiser. There's all kinds of variations.
Yes, there's even one for Hallmark. which everyone at the end probably are all happy and kiss.
But not till the very end.
Right.
Can't do that till the
I
very
don't
end.
think you can be vicious in the Hallmark one.
Yeah. We also own a couple here.
Yes.
Variations.
We have this Star Wars one. You can guess whose that is. And it says fast dealing property trading game.
You're skeptical.
I'm very skeptical. And then we have this Monopoly deal, which it's been a while since we played this, but I do remember liking it, and it is a lot faster. Yeah. And it's something like you can just take in the car or wherever and do.
Yeah, it's pretty worn. We used it for a while.
Yeah.
Quite a bit. All right, so here's a question. You can pause, and if you're with other people, go ahead and talk about this. How many times in your lifetime do you think you have played the game or a variation of Monopoly?
The whole game?
I didn't say the whole game. Just played it. You might not be as familiar with today's biblical passage in Luke as other stories in the Bible, partly because it's kind of an awkward passage to understand. The biggest difficulty lies in the fact that the role model in the story is called dishonest. There's a few ways it's been handled throughout history, most of which lead us to the same ultimate point. And I'm going to read from the New Living Translation, which I feel gets us to that point a little more directly than some others. So see what you think of this. Luke 16. Jesus told this story to his disciples. There was a certain rich man who had a manager handling his affairs. One day a report came that the manager was wasting the employer's money. So the employer called him in and said, "What's this I hear about you? Get your report in order because you're going to be fired." The manager thought to himself, "Now what? My boss has fired me. I don't have the strength to dig ditches, and I'm too proud to beg. I know how to ensure that I'll have plenty of friends who'll give me a home when I'm fired." So he invited each person who owed money to his employer to come and discuss the situation. He asked the first one, "How much do you owe him?" The man replied, "I owe him 800 gallons of olive oil." So the manager told him, "Take the bill and quickly change it to 400 gallons. "And how much do you owe my employer?" he asked the next man. "I owe him 1,000 bushels of wheat," was the reply. Here, the manager said, "Take the bill and change it to 800 bushels. The rich man had to admire the dishonest rascal for being so shrewd. And it is true that the children of this world are more shrewd in dealing with the world around them than are the children of the light. See how it's not quite straightforward? The manager is called dishonest, yet is commended by the rich employer. The manager is said to have wasted the resources. Exact same language, by the way, as the younger brother in the preceding prodigal son story. Yet Jesus seems to make him, the one who wastes the resources, the role model. What is Jesus trying to tell us? So it gets a little clearer with verse 9. Here's the lesson. Use your worldly resources to benefit others and make friends. Then when your possessions are gone, they will welcome you into an eternal home. In a word, this story is about more. With our access to resources, are we bent towards, all right, it's more for me to have? Or, all right, it's more for me to use? In the Monopoly game, it certainly pulls us into that more to have mentality. And in this parable, the manager certainly starts out with a more to have mentality too. And maybe he's still motivated by personal gain as that story continues. But in the second scene, he switches to using access to resources to make others' lives easier. Many scholars will suggest that he does this by cutting out his own commission. You and I are also just managers. And whether or not we realize the ways that we may have wasted the master's resources, our rich God entrusts us with more resources which he intends to be used in service to others and in his kingdom. What we own is really just on loan. So here's verse 9 again, but in a different translation. And I tell you, make friends for yourselves by means of unrighteous wealth, so that when it fails, they may receive you into the eternal dwellings. In another word, this story is about now. Are we using our resources now for satisfaction now, or are we investing our resources now for salvation later? In the Monopoly game, there are lessons about piling up cash now to feel more secure versus investing our cash now to actually be more secure in the game later. Jesus points out in the parable that what we do now with our earthly resources is part of the momentum that carries us into the afterlife. At the very least, in the story, the manager is commended for impacting the future with the resources he had available at the moment. Now, this is not to try to say that the number of dollars that we give away is what earns our ticket into the kingdom. Yet there is an accountability for what we do now with what we have access to now. Generosity impacts our own destiny, but also at stake here is the destiny of others. And another clue to that's what's at stake here is not just our own well-being, is that in verse 4, the word for home is the same word that can be used for the whole people, the family of God, or the Christian church. Generosity now, maybe especially sacrificial generosity, is a powerful advertisement for the activity of Christ's kingdom here on earth. So here's verse 9 one more time, this time from a translation called The Voice. Learn some lessons from this crooked but clever asset manager. Realize that the purpose of money is to strengthen friendships, to provide opportunities for being generous and kind. Eventually, money will be useless to you, but if you use it generously to serve others, you will be welcomed joyfully into your eternal destination. So, in another word, Jesus' story is about ambition. When we recently played Monopoly, it took a deliberate effort for me to focus on the purpose of the game, which was to enjoy playing together, more than the objective of the game, which was to get as rich as possible and win. In the context of this world, it's easy to buy into the objective of getting richer, or for some of us, we might put that as getting less poor. In a greater sense of our soul, the purpose is to become more generous, like our Heavenly Father. The quantity of available resources and the quality of a charitable manager are independent variables. In other words, we might tell ourselves, I'll be more generous when I have more. But Jesus tells us faithfulness is proven regardless of how much we have. So here's the skinny on my chocolate pie. Right, there's nothing skinny about me or the chocolate pie. Also, when I went to open this treasure this week, there were 2 coworkers who were also in the building. I set out the pie so it could start to thaw, and when I went back later, guess what happened? Right, they ate some of my pie. No, they didn't steal it. What kind of people do you think I work with? No, I had said, I'm going to open this chocolate pie. Would you like a slice? And they both said yes. So I went back later and plated them each their own slice, took it to them, and they were grateful and happy, and so was I. The greater joy is not in having and getting more for ourselves. Although I was certainly happy and felt loved to have received this pie in the first place, the blessing was multiplied when I shared. That was an even greater joy. Our human lives are not pawns bouncing around some board game just trying to get more and more and more every turn. What we have is not ours to enjoy alone. All of it is blessed to us so that we have a way of being a blessing to others. Yes, we should use our resources to take care of our needs gratefully, and we should set aside some of our resources wisely for later needs, trusting God most of all. And yes, we should find ways to be generous with our resources every trip around the board. I do believe that everything is somehow spiritual. God can even be found in games. So take time to get away from what you have to get done on your own or with your household. Have some fun. Make sure your soul is getting holy play and holy rest, and may your rest be blessed.